What is going on? Welcome back to the channel. This is my MK4 Supra, but unfortunately it currently sounds like this. So as you heard from that, the manifold's blowing quite bad, so we're going to have to start stripping it down to have a look and see what's up with it. So I'm going to start off by taking this off the top here. And then this one at the back here, but this is already quite loose, like I can do that with my hand, like it literally just pulls off, so it's quite straightforward, that is. Now that that's off at the top there, we just need to undo this one bolt down here which is holding the intake on, just so we can get it out of our way. Okay, now that I've loosened the top off and I've loosened the bottom off, I'm just going to remove the whole induction kit as one piece. I'm not going to take it off fully, there's that red vacuum line still on it, we're just going to rest it over here for now, because that's enough just so it's out of my way so I can get to the manifold. Now that's all out of the way, we have clear access to the heat shield. So we just have 4 bolts, this is a size 12, just to get the heat shield off, and then we can have a look at the manifold and start taking the manifold off. Now that them 4 bolts are off, we can take this heat shield off. So it seems to catch on the distributor a little bit, so there is a bit of wiggling to get it off, but you just have to take it off the back end first and then it'll drop out from underneath. And then once that's out of the way, as you can see, we have clear access to the manifold. So it's this manifold that's leaking rather than this one, like the blow's coming from down here somewhere. So I'm not sure if it's the gasket or the manifold itself, but it looks like it's going to be quite simple, as in we can just unbolt it down there and unbolt it at the top, and then this one unit should come out by itself and we can get it welded up. The reason I'm only going to get it welded up rather than replacing the whole manifold is because if you've watched the previous videos, we do plan on boosting the car in the future, so I don't see much point in spending £200 on a whole new manifold to just take it off and put a turbo manifold in the near future, so to speak. So we're just going to try and take these bolts out now, hopefully nothing snaps. Okay, so as you can see, I'm currently using a breaker bar for this. These are a size 14. I only use the breaker bar just to crack the nuts off. They've probably never been taken off if I'm honest, so they were quite tight. I've lost my 1/2 inch ratchet, so I was just using a 3/8 with a adapter to go to 1/2 inch. Hence, I just decided to use the breaker bar because it gave me a lot more leverage just to like initially crack the nuts off, so to speak. My thoughts were as well, because it had the extra leverage, that there would just be a lot less tension on the studs, because I'm not sat there hanging off a little 3/8 ratchet trying to get this bolts undone. So that one has pulled the stud out the head. The other one's not, as you can see the bolts come out nicely, but this one is snagged at the end and took the bolt out, but that's not a problem. So yeah, as you've seen from that one took the stud out. None of the others did, all the others came off quite nicely, but that one just decided to pull the stud out with it. I definitely think I do need to invest in an impact gun at some point soon, just because it'll make this sort of stuff so much easier. If you have got any recommendations, then drop them down in the comments below. Now that all the manifold bolts are out, we move on to these 2 bolts down the bottom here, and this is where we find out what was actually wrong with the exhaust. Okay, so I found the problem. I don't know if you can see down here, but down the back, this is obviously meant to be joined here, and we have bolts here that are holding it together. Well, that's not together. So it may have to be a new manifold. We'll have a look. So I had to remove these 2 studs. I was trying to take the manifold off and it just wouldn't budge at all. It kept fouling at the bottom basically, whereas with them out it then allowed enough room for me to wiggle the manifold out. As you can see now that it's off, this should be attached down there, and we should have had to remove the 2 bolts to get it off, but yeah, that's a clean break, that is. So let's speak to the fab guy and see what he thinks he can do. Okay, so it's a new day now. As you can see, the sun's shining. It just got too dark last night, so I've come back to it the day after. As you can see, I've took the front bumper off. It catches on these orange stands, so I've took it off. It just means getting the car on them is a lot easier. As you can see, I've also put the manifold back on. Now my thought process is, if I can try and mark it out down here, then the fab guy will be able to replicate the current angle that the manifold's at when he welds it. So we are going to weld it. I've spoke to him, he thinks he can do it, so we'll give it a shot. It's better than nothing at the end of the day. But yeah, the fab guy, obviously I need to try and do something about marking it out, because it needs to be flush along the top here, otherwise this manifold won't bolt to the head. I do think it's going to be difficult to try and mark it out down here, so whilst I try and figure out a way to do that, let's carry on stripping it, and to do that we've got to take these sensors off first. So these are a size 12. These nuts are actually exactly the same as the ones that are used to hold the heat shield onto the manifold. These ones on the front manifold, these struggled to come out, to be fair. The ones on the rear, they came out quite easy, like they just removed the nut and the stud stayed where it was. As you can see though, on this front one, this is pulling the studs out straight away. So I sprayed it with WD-40 and then moved on to the rear just to let the WD-40 soak in. When doing the front one, I decided to try and loosen it, tighten it, loosen it and tighten it, just to work the threads forwards and backwards to see if it helped at all. To be fair, when I was undoing it, I did think this bolt was going to snap, but it didn't. But when we do get it out, you can see like where it's been chewed up. A few people think the threads have been pulled, but I don't think they have. So both of them are out now. This one, that's definitely been out before. I don't know if the camera's focusing on it well. But yeah, you can see where it's bright silver. It's been chewed up quite bad, that does. I'm not really sure why. Also looks chewed up this end as well, which is weird. Okay, so we're under the car now. The next job, we've got to remove that sensor and then undo both the bolts that are holding the cat onto the rest of the exhaust. Okay, as you can see, we're straight onto removing the manifold. I did record undoing the cat to the rest of the exhaust, but unfortunately you can't really see anything because of how dark it is. Like this video now, you're struggling to see bits, but this is above the car with a light on it, so underneath the car you literally couldn't see anything at all. So to remove the front manifold, it's exactly the same as the rear, so a size 14. As you can see, I'm using a breaker bar just to crack them off again, and then I move on to a ratchet. A bit of WD-40 just to make sure that we don't snap anything, and the front one surprisingly came out quite nice, to be fair. None of the studs got pulled, it just brought the nuts off and left the studs where they are in the head. We're just undoing the final nuts now, and once they're all out we can remove the whole front manifold with the cat in one whole unit. I was going to slow this clip down so you can see me remove it, but there really is no point, it goes pitch black. Okay, so that's the manifold out, it's pitch black now. I've stopped recording on the GoPro because I don't have a torch for it just yet, so this is on my phone, so I do apologise if the audio is slightly different. But as you can see, the cat obviously splits into two, so the manifolds are separate, and here that is completely off the exhaust, so that's obviously meant to be together, and it's not even like it's held on a little bit, like that's in two pieces completely. So the I could just give this the fab guy like this, but then he's got to try and guess the way that this fits to the head. So if he welds this at the wrong angle, then we could have a manifold that doesn't fit the head, and I can't just give him a gasket because the gasket on these is in two pieces. So rather than just giving him the manifold like this and telling him to guess and hoping that it comes out all right, what I've done is got some cardboard out of the garage, I've pushed it onto the cylinder head like that, and then hopefully I'll be able to give him this cardboard template and it should give him a rough idea that it's close enough that it works. Rather than just guessing, it's better than nothing. Hopefully it works, and we'll come back tomorrow once it's welded up and see how it fits. So we've got the manifold back from the fab guy, and it's looking a lot healthier than it was yesterday. He did use the template, so as you can see all the holes pretty much line up, so I think he's done a cracking job, to be fair. Let's get into putting this manifold back on the car. Some of you may notice the mistake I've just made. I didn't put the gaskets back on, so I've got to take it back off. Okay, so we're just putting the manifolds back on now. It's exactly the same as to remove them, just in reverse. So it's a size 14. As you probably guessed by looking at them gaskets, they are reused, they are the old ones, because I don't really think it needed new ones, to be fair. And once the car's up and started, it's completely fine, like they're not blowing or anything like that. Whilst the fab guy had the manifold, he also tried to clean up the studs. So when the sensors were in the manifold, if you remember when we were removing them, the front one pulled the studs out and looked like the studs had been chewed up quite bad, whereas the rear one come off quite nicely. So he ran a tap into the manifold, and then we also ran like a dye over the stud just to try and clean up the threads a little bit. It's improved it, but it still isn't perfect. That's the manifold back on. Now we can move on to fitting the sensors back in. Okay, so that's both sensors bolted up. Now we need to work on the bottom part of the exhaust. Okay, so this is the exhaust and we have to join it there. Okay, so now that the exhaust is all bolted up down the bottom, it's just time to put the heat shield on, and then we'll put the intake pipe on, and then it's finished so we can listen to it and see how much better it sounds. Okay, so we're just finishing up on bolting the induction kit back to the car. The exhaust is back on, heat shield's back on, etc. The car's back in one piece. So let's start it up and see how it sounds. Well, that definitely sounds better than what it did at the start of the video. Okay, that's it for this video. Thanks for watching if you've made it this far. Don't forget to smash that subscribe button and I'll catch you on the next video. Catch you on the next one.